care for, got it. Our care for everyone who've been impacted by the recent storms. I wanted to let you know in the chat, we're here for you. So we have a helpline in English and in Spanish. So if Sophia or Alex, can you put that in the chat right now? Our helpline. So we're here for you. It's to help you out for services and mental health services and just to listen. If you're have any thing you need us for. Also, I wanted to announcement. So I'm going to do a couple announcements. We're in our spring campaign. So we're able to bring the speaker meeting to you in all of our services because in part donations from individuals. And we went from serving 6,000 people 3 years ago to 17,000 people last year. So we can do that with your donations. So there is a link to in the chat. There'll be in a few minutes, a link to the chat to our donation page. So please donate if you can. We're trying to raise money for our programs. And then, so I have some exciting news. We have 3 classes coming up in April, and the classes are in English and in Spanish. So we have, if you go to our website, it's on our website to enroll in our classes on the front page, on the bottom of the page. So the classes that we have a basics class, which is 6-week class for anybody, parents who are loved ones supporting youth. And that's in English and in Spanish. So please pass that around. Let people know that you can go to our website for that class. We have a family to family class, and that's for family members or loved ones who are supporting someone with a mental health condition. That's a really great class that people really love and get a lot of support and help from. We also have a class called Person to Person, which is a class for people with mental health conditions. So I encourage you, if you know anyone, sometimes these classes, the groups become good friends and they support each other. So it's a great way to get support and just support in terms of learning about mental health conditions and different strategies, but also get support from peers, people who are going through what you're going through. All right, I did my announcements. Now I get to introduce the speaker. And we are really grateful to have David Dicken here with us today. David is a crisis counselor at the Crisis Text Line and a featured speaker for NAMI, for National Alliance of Mental Illness. So that would be NAMI National. We're an affiliate, but that's our national organization. His passion is bringing hope to people in pain, helping them toward healing and wholeness. David provides counseling, coaching, and connections to resources. He helps people find a healthy community. His goal is empowering people to move from survival mode, feelings of doubt and crisis, to believing they can thrive and achieve their dreams and goals. Learn more about David at his website, Make Someone Great Today, and we can put that in the chat. So without further ado, as you say, David, thank you so much for coming, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm actually on the road, but we're all connected thanks to the internet and Zoom and NAMI Santa Cruz and the people that are hosting me on my event over here at Rockside. I'm actually at the Rockside in Michigan, so I'm 3 hours ahead, but that's just fine. So as I was introduced, you'll see that my organization is called Make Someone Great Today, and that'll be on the slide, and it's also going to be in the chat. So let's get started. So in my bio, we already covered the things that I've been doing. I guess I'll just do the English, and then the Spanish is taken care of already. So I'll just move along in the English. So we're going to cover tonight healthy communication, strength-based support, empowering, collaborative problem solving, commitment, and safety planning. You see, life's a journey. So whether you're the loved one or the supporter, you're on your own individual journey. And one of the themes of NAMI is that NAMI supports both the person suffering from a mental illness and the family. So they have the family to family class, they have the peer classes, they have peer support, and they have family support. And each of those dynamics is on a unique journey. So I want to communicate that we know that at NAMI. So let's move right into what is healthy communication. First, let's look at unhealthy communication to produce a contrast. So sometimes when I meet with families, I'll hear things like, we get into it when I get home. And then I ask the family, well, how do you feel at that time? Oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, I'm tired. So then the follow-up question becomes, well, is this really a good time to talk to your loved one? No, it's not. Is it understandable that you've come home from work and you want to help your loved one who's isolating or has experienced some symptoms from their diagnosis? Absolutely. But tonight we want to discuss best practice and ways to support your loved one. And so we want to identify these healthy ways, and I'm developing here a short contrast on the unhealthy and things many of us do on a regular basis, including me. Sometimes parents ask, is it something that I did? Or could we have done something different as a family, as we would support our loved one? And I just want everyone to know that NAMI's official position on that question is that it's no one's fault. It's not parenting, it's not the family, and it's not the loved one. We focus on the diagnosis, support, hope, and the resources that we can talk about later. And remember, we know at NAMI that as supporters, you're hurting too. And we want you to know that we're here for you. And as it was mentioned earlier, NAMI has a signature program called Family to Family that many of you may have already attended, or it might be something that would be in your resource portfolio that you could attend at some point when it's convenient for you. So unhealthy communication, as I said, comes when we have poor self-care, or when we try to fix or change our loved one, or we sound critical or judgmental, or when we lack patience and empathy. You see, the key in starting best support with our loved ones in terms of support is our self-care. So many of the families that we support suffer from poor self-care. They're not sleeping. They have an unhealthy diet. Maybe they're even doing some self-medicating. Who knows? So we want to get back on track with our self-care. What does sleep look like? What does diet look like? What does exercise look like? What does your social life look like? Maybe there's a spiritual component that needs some attention. So I wanted to draw your attention to the value of self-care and supporting your loved one. And there's lots of material on self-care out there that you could talk to your friends about and see what has helped them and share resources. You see, healthy communication begins when we have good self-care and we're at a place where we can be intentional and plan ahead. So when is the best time to have a healthy conversation with your loved one? How about a pre-planned special time with just you and your loved one? That safe place that you and your loved one together can decide is the best place to meet and have a discussion about support and about how we can love each other and support each other and talk about medication and diagnoses, hurt, pain, trauma, and all the things that go along with having a diagnosis. You see, healthy communication starts with empathy and patience. It asks open-ended questions. Questions like, can you tell me how you're feeling today? Notice that's open. as opposed to, oh, you went hiking. You're probably feeling better. That's an assumption. So we want to ask open-ended question. Oh, you went hiking today? How was it? And then let your loved one tell you. Another good question to have in your tool bag is, who best supports you? Everywhere I go, if you know me outside of what we're talking about tonight, if you're with me on my travels, you'll hear me ask the question, so who best supports you? Oh, my mom, my dad, my sister, some friends in the community, my best friend. You can follow up with asking then, what do you like about that support? You could even say, how do you like my support? Or where do I fit in on that list? And what is it about my support that you like? Or what would you change in my support? Because after all, I'm here for you. So I want you to coach me on how I can best support you. Notice that you're giving space for your loved one to take the lead on what kind of support that they want. I meet with a lot of families that say, my loved one needs this. My loved one should do that. My loved one should. My loved one should. And has great intentions. And you have a big heart. But it might not be what your loved one is looking for. So let's create that safe space, that learning environment for all of us to learn together what is it that your loved one is looking for in terms of best support? What helps them to feel better? What helps them to have a good day? You see, we focus on their emotions and not the situation. My clients tell me a lot of things that frustrate them. Well, I can't make that frustration go away. I cannot change that situation. If they have a job and their boss irritates them, I can't fix that. But I can support my loved one who's struggling with maybe something that's going on at work. I can focus on their emotions and how they're dealing with the emotions that follow all that frustration that they're experiencing. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on the emotions, which also goes back to when I talked about the unhealthy approach is where we try to fix, when it's better to listen, learn, and find out what kind of support our loved one is looking for. And then and the best way to do that is to focus on the emotions and let them take the lead. So we start by validating our loved one's needs. Again, this moves us away from fixing. So when our loved one comes to us and says, you know what, mom, dad, brother, sister, I need to confess, I was self-medicating. Oh, but I thought you said you weren't going to do that anymore. That's not validating. Your frustration might be understandable, but we want to make sure we're focusing on your loved one's feelings. So ask them, tell me about this relapse experience. Tell me why you were self-medicating and what those emotions were that brought you to that place or those feelings. You'll find that your support will really start to be enhanced, and you'll really get into some nice discussions when you create this environment for learning. And one of the ways to do that is to validate how your loved one is feeling, because those feelings are real. We don't want to be dismissive with statements like, oh, it'll run its course, or, you know, you'll be okay. It's not that bad this time. I've seen you suffer like this before, and it's not that bad this time. Again, well intentions, but it might not be what your loved one is looking for. Or even statements like, oh, it's going to get better, or I know how you feel. Sometimes that can produce some frustration. Or have you taken your medication? You know, that might be a great question because you see that your loved one is kind of off tonight, but your loved one may not like that question. It doesn't really validate. In fact, they might take it as judgment. You see, we focus on emotions, or focusing on emotions begins when we validate. So we call it what it is. If they're working long hours at work and the house needs cleaning and there's a leaky pipe and the garage door's broken, yeah, that's overwhelming. If they've been hurt by another loved one or a spouse or a friend, that's painful. If they lost their job, that's scary. You see, these validations don't work. You're actually starting to tell them that the way they're feeling is understandable, because losing your job is scary. Being overwhelmed is a very real feeling that we can support our loved ones in terms of how they feel. And we definitely don't want to say, I understand, when it's better to say, you know what? It's understandable that you want to get a different medication. It's understandable that you're exhausted when you got home. It's understandable that you're frustrated that your outpatient is not working, or you're not getting as much out of the classes you've been attending as you thought you would. See, this is what empathy looks like. When we begin to understand the frustration and the pain and the things that then these negative emotions that our loved one is feeling. You know, we're emotional beings and we have emotions that are positive and negative. So we want to validate. We don't want to encourage bad behavior or something like that. We're just validating their feelings. And empathy, this is my picture of empathy, where we go in with our loved one. We don't reach down and try to pull them up. We go to where they are. You see, as I mentioned, empathy starts when we go to where our loved one is. Some people like to call it sitting with them, where you just sit with them and support and provide a hug or attention, or just making them feel special. And if they're depressed and they're laying around on the couch, then maybe just find a way and just kind of go there. Try to empathize in that as your loved one is experiencing depression. Maybe they're bipolar and now they're experiencing some mania. Find a way to support them as they would experience those manic episodes. If it's anxiety, go there. If it's feelings of worthlessness, go there. And what I mean by go there when I say feelings of worthlessness, try to be empathetic and get involved in those feelings with your loved one. Instead of saying, oh, but don't you know that I love you? Yes, they do know that you love them, but they're feeling worthless. So let's go there and let's find out why they're feeling worthless. And then let's find ways to them, for our loved one, to start embrace feelings of being valued and loved. Instead of just telling them, let's go with them on this journey of how they're feeling. Because a lot of my clients, friends, and if you're watching today or listening, you either might be having feelings of worthlessness, or your loved one might be telling you about feelings of worthlessness. And we're hope bearers. We talked about this earlier when it was introduced by your executive director about hope. NAMI is here to provide hope. I'm here tonight to provide you some hope so you can move away from those feelings of worthlessness. You see, validation continues as we listen in a non-judgmental way. You see, it's non-judgmental because we're listening to learn. Let me give you an example. Daughter comes home and says, Mom, I don't want to take my medication anymore. What does mom say? You got to take your meds. It'll help you feel better. Remember, the doctor said it might take like 3 weeks for you to start to feel better. That's actually a judgment. That daughter that I just described who came home was telling her mom there's got to be a reason why she said, I don't want to take my meds. So let's go there. Let's find out. Hey, I know you were hoping the meds were really going to help. Now it sounds like they're not working. So how can I be with you on this journey as you would process and make decisions and work with your psychiatrist on how to find the best medication that works? Tell me, what kind of support are you looking right now as you make this very complex and difficult decision about medication? That's just far less judgmental, and it's far more supportive. You see, there's an emotional spectrum. It's like a rainbow. Maybe my slide should be a rainbow. And we all have a unique place on that rainbow. But our loved one could be at one spot of the spectrum of the rainbow, and we could be in another spot on the spectrum of the rainbow. And we don't necessarily want to bring our loved one to where we are. As empathy would say it, go to where your loved one is. And there's places for all of us on this beautiful emotional spectrum. You see, non-judgmental listening begins when we have active listening, when our listening starts with some exploring. Can you tell me why you're feeling that way? Was there a trigger? And we can gently, for example, was there a trigger? And then we can gently move into support. We want to stick with validation and active listening before we gently moved into, maybe some collaborative problem solving, which is one of the sections in our presentation tonight that we can talk about. And again, we can review and find out what kind of support are you looking for, and let your loved one take the lead. You'll actually empower them, which is another section of our presentation tonight, when you allow them to take the lead. And we talked about this question already that I already addressed about the medication discussion. So let's go over some key points to remember as we wrap up this first section. The best support starts when we have good self-care, when we focus on emotions, when we validate our loved one's feelings, when we show empathy, have patience, and when we listen to learn. Now, strength-based support is our next section, and it begins when we empower. We want to build up our loved ones. We want to make them strong. You see, encourage means to make somebody else strong. You ever heard that word, encourage? Encourage actually means to make somebody else strong. That's one of the beautiful things that we get to do as supporters, is we can make somebody else or our loved ones strong. Often our loved ones, because of the diagnosis and the way they're feeling and the behavior that follows, they're feeling discouraged and they're feeling weak. But in many cases, they're actually very strong. And so we can be encouragers and remind them of successes that they've had that show strength. We can build them up and make them strong. Often it's more about what you do than what you say. One family came and met with me. They reached out and they said, "Hey, Dave, we're really in crisis with our daughter. Can you meet with us?" I said, "Sure." So we met for some coffee and a sandwich, and we talked about some things. And then that family went home and they called me later that afternoon and they said, "It's interesting, Dave. Our daughter thanked us for reaching out and meeting with you. She said, because you're trying to understand me." When we try to understand our loved ones, that's when their feelings are validated. That's when they get empowered. That's when they can take the lead. Often that can be the first step forward and beginning to feel better. So sometimes it's just more about what you do than what you say. And also, you're not fixing when you're doing. So that's good. And you're modeling, it gives them something maybe to duplicate or to follow. So what do children want? A lot of my clients are experiencing, even in junior high and younger, are experiencing emotional instability. And so I meet with these young children and they say things like, "I want to be accepted for who I am. I want to be free to express myself. I want to be heard. I want to be valued and loved." Wouldn't we all want to be accepted and have freedom to express ourselves? We all want to be heard and we all want to be valued and loved. So ask yourself, is the communication, is the support that I'm providing addressing these desires of our younger generation, teens, young adults? This is what they're telling us. Students say things like, "I can't. I don't have any friends. No one understands me, and I'm a burden." And some of them say, "I'm better off dead." I'm getting these statements from young children. I'm better off dead. So we must deal with the root cause. We must be open to hearing statements like that so we can help keep them safe. But let me say this again. I'm seeing a lot of patterns. I can't. I don't have any friends. You see, these young children, they want to belong. They want to be accepted. But often children with a diagnosis have a difficult time and they have a challenge fitting in. So they feel like they don't have any friends, and sometimes they don't have any friends. And then they start to feel like a burden, which further causes them to isolate. And when they isolate, they're even further having a hard time developing friends. So let's move now into strength-based support, where we empower. You see, friends, my friend wrote a book called Honor, What Love Looks Like. And she writes, we put crowns on people's heads and we help them grow into them. And this is kind of my hokey Burger King, crown, but I just wanted to give you a word picture. Friends, we have such an opportunity. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's overwhelming, but we have an amazing opportunity to take a crown and put it on our young children's head and let them grow into that crown. And they'll feel it. You place that crown on your loved one's head and they'll feel it and they'll grow into it. You see, empowering begins when we let go. When we let go. This is your loved one's journey. It's their story and they get to write it. But they're not alone. And we are there to help them write it. And then we can start with reminding our loved ones of previous successes. You see, this demonstrates that they can do it. We can use previous successes as evidence that they're strong. We can come alongside them and stand with them and empower them to write their story. These are words of encouragement that our loved ones would love to hear you say and come along with them and help them rewrite their story. A lot of these folks with trauma and a diagnosis, they haven't lost their dreams. They might be feeling discouraged, but the dream's there somewhere. And we can talk more about that later, but helping our loved ones continue to hold on to those dreams and develop tools and a pathway to achieve those dreams is powerful. You see, friends, we're not painters, we're eye doctors. We don't show the world. We don't show our loved one the world. We help them to see it. We help them to reframe and gain a healthy interpretation of what's going on out there. Is everyone really staring at me? Does everyone really think I'm different? Instead of telling them, oh, not everybody thinks you're different, let's give them tools and let's empower them to put on the proper lens that says, you know what? I am valued and loved. And you've been showing this to me, your loved one might say. Let's help them get a new lens. You see, when we're painters, we're giving advice. When we're eye doctors, we're coming alongside and we're just helping them with the lens so they can get a healthy interpretation of what's really going on. Again, we don't fix, we empower. You see, parents often pressure their child to change. Why do they pressure their child to change? Because they see that their child is having a tough time fitting in because of a diagnosis. So they want their child to be different so they can fit in. But all that does is put more pressure on the child. Remember earlier, the child was saying, but yet the children tell me things like, I want to be accepted. How about if you're the first one that accepts your child, your loved one, for who they are? And ask them how they make that feel. You see, when we put pressure for change, it produces stress. And when our loved one has stress, it makes them harder to manage the emotions that they're experiencing from the diagnosis or the things that the diagnosis is producing. You see, it's so healthy to accept our loved ones for who they are. We want to also help our children when we accept them for who we are. We begin to help them move away from I can't to I can. I have so many loved ones out there and so many clients that say, I can't. Yet they look able-bodied because it's mental, it's in the mind. These feelings of I can't come from places of I feel worthless, I'm overwhelmed, There's noise and distraction and sensory overload. So there's feelings of overwhelmment and feelings of I can't. So let's help them break that down, and let's help them move away from I can't to I can. So what are some key points to remember from this last section? We don't fix. We empower and we build up. You see, often it's more about what you do than what you say. Children want to be accepted for who they are. And one of my favorite word pictures is, we're not painters, we're eye doctors. Okay, let's talk a little bit about circling. Circling tends to focus on an unresolved feeling or stressor. So you've been in a conversation with your loved one, and now it's approaching 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And they're beginning to focus on something, could be the original thing that they came to you about. And they're still frustrated because they feel like that stressor or those feelings have not been addressed. But I still feel bad, your loved one might say after 45 minutes, or my boss is still unfair or is a jerk or whatever's going on, that might still be there. So they want to talk more about it. But once we get around 45 minutes, we're starting to repeat ourselves. And often we're feeding and we're creating more stress on top of the stressor by discussing it over and over like that. So we want to begin to wrap things up. That's why I call it circling, because we're talking about the same thing for a long period of time, and we're starting to repeat ourselves, and it's starting to bring on some discouragement. Remember, we're hope bearers, so we want to bring hope in moments of despair. So what are some helpful hints? So we've been talking to our loved one for 45 minutes or something along those lines. Start by highlighting things that have been discussed in the conversation that went well. Remind them of areas where they're strong and areas where they've shown deep resilience. Also, you want to remind your loved one that we don't solve all of our problems in one conversation. So maybe in that conversation, that 45 minutes, that benchmark I keep sharing, maybe in that 45-minute time, that there was something that was solved. So highlight that. Show that there was some success in our 45-minute conversation. And then begin to wrap things up by reviewing positive discoveries, which is pretty much what I was just saying. And this is also a good time to introduce some strength IDs. You were courageous. The strength idea is that you're courageous. And then you tell them why you feel like they're courageous, or what you're seeing that makes you say you're courageous. You're courageous for being so open with me today about this difficult situation. We can also identify next steps. What are some things that happened in this conversation that we've accomplished, and what does it look like in the next conversation? And then we can move into a warm close to kind of wrap things up. So let's move then into steps. What are these steps I'm talking about? Sometimes when we use steps, it gives our loved ones basically a tool for them to help guide themselves. As you come alongside them, you're giving them a tool that they can use to measure success in either a conversation or in life. So you can say things like, well, step one was reaching out today and being so open with me about your feelings. Step two was identifying that stressor or the hurt or wherever the pain is. And step three was embracing some kind of change, some change that might help you move through and replace like depression with joy. And so now as we wrap things up, let's identify step four together. Let's the two of us or the three of us, whoever's in that conversation, let's identify what step four is so we can show some progress and we can do it becomes something we can build on. And then maybe step four can be reserved for the next discussion or the next conversation. Let's talk about this idea of being out of control. Family members tell me, my loved one is out of control. I'm just checking the time here. My loved one is out of control. And it might sound like they're out of control because they're throwing the thermos in frustration against the garage door. But you know what I'll share with my clients? Maybe your loved one has some control. And maybe your loved one is using that control, that power, to take that thermos and throw it against the garage door. So how about if we take that same energy, that same power and control, and use it to get the help and support that you deserve? And this is what I'm saying here. Let's use that power and control to reach out and get help for the pain that you're in. Another loved one that I was supporting was in the hospital. So I went to visit with her, and she said, you know what? I'm done. I'm out of control. I've lost it and I'm done. Well, what had happened is she was having some emotional instability, and she ran out from her house and she went into the neighborhood, and they couldn't find her for several hours. So the police were called and they ended up finding her. And then now back to the hospital room where I was earlier in this discussion that I was saying, I was chatting with her about power and control. And she said, I've lost control. And I said, but wait a minute. What about the power you exercised? What about the control you had when it took 4 police officers to hold you down and get you into the back of the police car? Now, I'm not endorsing force or handcuffs. I'm just telling you about a story that happened and how I used the dynamics of that story to empower one of my clients. And then she said, well, I guess I'm in some control. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not here to bust your chops. I know you've been through a tough time, but I'm just trying to use an opportunity, something fresh, to show you that you have power. And I want to encourage you to use that same power that you used tonight when you ran outside, when you were crying out for help, when you were fighting with the police officers. Take all that power and use it to reach out and get the help that you deserve and the support that you deserve. You know, the next day, this is a true story. The next day, her mom called me and said, hey, guess what? My daughter told me she wants to reach out. She wants to use her power and control to reach out and get the help that she deserves. And she ended up getting involved in some intense outpatient support at a local hospital. And it had a nice story. Let's talk about voices now. Ask your loved one, what are the voices saying? And also, I'm not suggesting we say that voices may or may not be real. I'm not asking us to get involved in whether or not the voices are real. I'm just talking about how to deal with people who say, I'm hearing voices, okay? So ask your loved one, what are the voices saying? And you might get answers like, you might get answers like, you're worthless, or I'm stupid, or you'll never amount to anything, or I feel like a burden, or I can't. We want to give our loved one freedom to tell us, what are the voices saying? You'll be very surprised how your loved one will respond to the question when asked, what are the voices saying? Because it helps them feel like, hey, I can talk about it now, which can actually put them in a place where they feel like they're in control. And then some people can't differentiate so now we can take this conversation about voices to the next level. And the next level is where we can help them differentiate between lies and the truth. You see, some of the voices tear down, like you're worthless and you're a burden. But there's other voices that can build up, like you're valued and you're loved and you're special. We want to help our loved one differentiate between the voices. Many of my clients will say things like, I feel like God is punishing me. Well, oh, what's God saying to you? Oh, he wants me to suffer. That's not from God. That's tear down. That's a lie. The truth builds you up. God wants to build you up. He doesn't want to tear you down. So this is the tool that we can give our loved ones and help them differentiate between these voices. So what does the real truth say? It says that you're valued and loved. It says you're an amazing mom. That's what the truth says. So what is collaborative problem solving? We're now moving into our next section, and we're going to talk about problem solving together. It's basically a skills development. You see, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You've heard this before, I'm sure. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Young men at Rockside, where I'm at today, call me, where I'm at today in Michigan as I'm out of town. Young men from Rockside call me after they graduate about their stressors, and they want to talk about it. And you know what I ask them? What tool is in your tool belt that you got at Rockside that you can use to address this? See, I wanted to focus on tools and empower them and help them to have skills so that they can feed themselves for a lifetime. I don't want to just give them a fish. And also, we become less directive. And again, when we're less directive, we're allowing our loved one to take the lead on the conversation. So instead of telling our loved ones what is best, we can start by asking, so how can I best support you in your journey to find healthy responses to your feelings of anger? Remember, we empower. And as I said, we want to help them learn how to fish instead of giving them a fish. Sometimes when we get into like enabling versus empowering, that could be a good differentiator. Are you giving them a fish, or are you teaching them how to fish? When we're less directive, okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading my slide here. Let me start again. So we want to be less directive, okay? We want, and sometimes our loved one will make statements like, it's my fault, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I can't. Instead of correcting your loved one and saying, no, it's not your fault. No, you're smart. Oh, you're not worthless. Oh, yes, you can. Instead of correcting them, which doesn't validate their feelings, by the way, we want to remember that we're eye doctors and help them come to a better understanding of what really happened so they can make their own conclusion that it's not their fault, that they're not stupid, that they're not worthless, and that they can. Let them make the discovery. Give them tools to help them process as eye doctors so they can see that they actually are valued and loved. Because remember, these are lies. So what are some key points to remember? We want to empower our loved one to use their control or this power to reach out and get the help that they deserve for the pain that they're in. Help your loved one navigate the voices. You see, the lie tears down, but the truth builds up. Be less directive. You know, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man a fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. Okay, we're kind of wrapping things up here a little bit. We're now into safety planning. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on safety planning. We're just going to touch on it because we've covered a lot of material. And I also meant to say early in the presentation, and I'll say it now, and I apologize for not saying it sooner. We are covering a lot of material. I mean, this could be several hours with breaks and things like that. So do it this way. And by the way, the presentation is going to be available to all of us watching tonight, and you can get that from NAMI. Think of a section where you just might find something that's helpful. Maybe you saw circling was helpful. Maybe you saw that this control and this power, control and power was helpful, or validating your feelings, or maybe was something with healthy communication caught your attention. So try to find that nugget tonight that might help you and give you some hope as a supporter. So safety planning. Okay, when we talk to a loved one who's experiencing feelings of suicide, these real feelings of suicide, we want to be direct. Earlier, I talked about being less direct because we were building up and we were teaching them how to fish. Now we want to make it clear your number one my number one priority is your safety. If our loved one's been isolating, if they make statements about I'm worthless or I'm better off dead, we need to be direct and we need to ask them, you've been isolating. So can you tell me, are you feeling suicidal? And if they say, no, but last week I was, then we need to say, okay, well, what are you going to do if you start having feelings of suicide or feelings of wanting to hurt yourself? Ask them. Remember, we like these open-ended questions to give them that freedom. So ask them, if you're having feelings of suicide, what are you going to do? And then once they answer, like, I don't know, or I'll call 911, or I'll call you, or I'm going to move forward with it, whatever they might say, move back to, okay, my number one priority is your safety. So if you're having these feelings, can you commit? Ask for that commitment. Can you call 911? Can you commit to calling 911? Or texting, hello, this is crisis text line where I work, 741-741. Or can you commit to calling your loved one and write down the exact name of that person that they're going to call? And be careful about being that person that takes that call, because if this happens at 2 a.m. and you're sleeping, they would have been better off calling 911 probably, or texting hello to 741-741, and then make sure you get that commitment about safety. So I do have some support groups, but it's just kind of irrelevant because you're up in Santa Cruz. So I'll just move through that. And now Rockside Ranch, let's see, where's the, okay. I didn't put the website on there. I should have, but there's a link and it's rocksideranch.org. And that's a restoration ranch. It's an 8-month program. And we have one in Northern California, Michigan, and in South Dakota. And as I mentioned, I'm in Michigan right now working with the students and staff, and we're kind of getting the tail into some snow. So, and yeah, there's my contact, Dave at makesomeonegreattoday.com. We didn't take any questions during the presentation, but I think we have quite a bit of time left to take some questions, plenty of questions. So I guess it does help to wait till the end because now we've got plenty of time. So go ahead. Are you going to read me the questions?
Thank you for that presentation, David. I have one question. And Stella, it's a question in Spanish, so I'll translate it and then you can interpret.
Yeah.
Okay. My son was diagnosed with schizophrenia since he was 16 years old. In this moment, he's almost 24 now. He likes to talk. He doesn't really talk as much at the house about his recuperation or what he speaks about in therapy and counseling. What can I do so he can smile again and talk more like he used to before?
So these are what are the dynamics that, you know, we get with this kind of a diagnosis where our loved one, you know, might not be smiling and they might not be communicating the same way they did at one time or before the diagnosis. So this is where we need to be patient. We need to be empathetic, and honestly, the best way is to create ways for them to be safe, to have that place where they can smile. You can translate some of that if you want.
Yeah, still is translating. Thank you. Olga, does that answer your question? Thank you. Does anyone else have a question that they would you can either raise your hand using the raising hand feature, where on the bottom of the control panel, again, it has reactions. You can raise your hand or you can physically raise your hand, or you can write your question in the chat. Go ahead, Therese.
Yes, thank you so much, David. I just want to say that in Santa Cruz County, we use 988 for our crisis call for any suicide or mental health support.
Okay, yeah, put that in the chat.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. We're taking some of those calls at crisis text line, so it's good connecting.
Thank you, Therese. I see NAMI Pomona Valley with
Yeah.
their hand up.
My son is 35 years old and he's single, and he refuses to take medication because he says it affects his sex drive. Is there anything out there that can help him? I've encouraged him to talk to his psychiatrist or psychotherapist, but it leaves me very concerned that that's the reason that he's not taking medication.
Yeah, I mean, you did the right thing. You asked him to check with his doctor. I mean, I'm a counselor. I don't have any training in medication. So as far as the symptoms that follow, I can't answer that. I don't have the background. But in terms of support, yeah, I encourage him to be open about his feelings on that medication story, with the professionals in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else would like to have, anyone else have a question for David? Lucinda, is that a raised hand?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure there's an answer, but I co-host some of the the family support groups for NAMI. And so much of what parents and loved ones struggle with is when, you were talking about their own journey and kind of staying in our own lane. I liked that, but what is the dividing line between, over helping and helping them establish their own autonomy? Am I making myself clear?
You ask a great question that deserves a great answer. And I think your question almost answers your question, because we're in different lanes and we're trying to, sometimes we're going, I like the lane, we're going a little faster, or they're going a little faster. So I think most loved ones would say, try to go at my speed. I think sometimes we want to go faster and we want to push them faster. And I think they would prefer us to come alongside and be as close to the speed they're going at as possible, because then that takes away any pressure that they might feel to go faster. Or if we're too slow, maybe they feel like we're pushing them. So this come alongside in these lanes is a great word picture. And I think open communication, like your question says, is so valuable. We want to make sure the communication is going, both ways. And then it's just that's going to really help, the conversation to be healthy and to be fruitful, quite frankly, in terms of support that they're looking for. And ask them about the feelings too.
About what?
Feelings.
Yeah,
does this
we
make you
teach a
feel? How does
lot
that make
of
you feel?
this in family to family, a lot about the communication and the I questions. And but I guess it's just, in each case it's different, but I think that is where a lot of the pain and suffering with loved ones and parents especially is, when am I enabling? When do I lock them out of the house and get a restraining order? When do I stop? This cycle that we've been on forever and ever and ever. A lot of parents have homeless people that don't want help and they're on the street, so there's a lot, like I said, it's different in each case, but I would say that's the biggest burden I need an answer for.
Well, we got their safety. You brought us some safety stuff.
Yeah.
So I talked about being less directive when we empower, but when we talk about safety, we're direct.
Yeah.
So when suicide comes up, we're direct with our questions.
Right.
When the behavior is destructive, we need to be direct. And we
Yeah.
need to get physical support as well if the behavior is destructive.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
get good support on safety stuff. And you're right, some of these diagnoses produce flight risk.
Right.
Sometimes flight is part of the diagnosis because there's paranoia and things like that. So that's part of this empathy that becomes part of our story. The
Yeah.
empathy starts to become like our story. Now, you brought up I statements. Let me speak to that to be helpful. So
Yeah.
I is how we're feeling. And when we ask open-ended questions, we're learning about how they're feeling. So
Yeah.
I said we want to both communicate. So we ask open-ended questions to our loved one to see how they're feeling. And we
Right.
use I statements to tell our loved ones how we're feeling.
Right. And yes, it's, and a lot of that's so helpful for so many parents because, it's just so easy. You need to stop doing this and you need to blah, 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 blah. And so it's a whole new approach, but I think it's a good one. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And also too, all this stuff that we're doing it kind of flows and it all kind of works hand in hand. So it's not like you have to memorize a bunch of questions. It's actually a way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. And I like just one more thing. I really like you're on your own journey, because that's really a shift of perspective, for a lot of parents. Oh, wait a minute, this is their path, even though
Yeah.
I don't think they're able to walk it, it actually is their path. It's kind of relieving in a way. So
Yeah, and maybe I want to add a slide even as I'm thinking about it. I talk about this, but it's not one of my slides, but we want to get to the root cause. If they're self-medicating, if
Mhm.
there's destructive behavior, instead of focusing on the medication, the self-medicating like alcohol or drugs, or destructive behavior and focusing on the behavior, what's the root cause? Why are you self-medicating? How did you feel? What caused you to relapse? What were you feeling when you relapsed? What were you feeling, when you broke the windows or when you kicked the chair or were throwing things against the garage door? Instead of saying like, you ruined the garage door when you threw the
Yeah.
thermos. Well, we all know that it's all smashed now. We're better off, what were you feeling?
Right.
It looks like you were frustrated. Help us understand to the best of our ability so we can empathize with you what kind of frustration you were experiencing as you were throwing that thermos.
Mm-hmm. I like it. It's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lucinda. We have a couple questions in the chat. The first one is, my husband, by Jessica Z. My husband talks to himself in front of me. However, when I ask him, what are the voices saying? He says, what voices? As if there are no voices. What could I say? There's a little reaction thing in the way. What can I say back to that? Or is there another way I can word this to get him to engage in conversation with me about it?
Mr. Husband, what do you enjoy talking about? What would you like to talk about? Are there things we can talk about that might help you feel better? Something like that. Ask them what they want to talk about. Because it sounds like you were trying to okay, he was talking to himself, so he might be hearing voices. So you were making an assumption. Well, maybe he is hearing voices, maybe he's not. We don't know. But you were making an assumption and he went, oh, there's no voices. So then you kind of got stuck. So you're right. We got to ask a different question. So maybe ask, well, what do you want to talk about? What would you like to talk about? And also too, if you're taking notes, use those notes to write down when he was talkative. Was it when you went to the store maybe you took him to the store? Maybe you guys went to the movies. Maybe you guys went to the beach. Maybe he had fun when you went to the barbecue at a relative's house and he was talkative. So try to duplicate things that help him, talk more and where he was enjoying himself.
Thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
other question is in Spanish.
Is that you, Kenna?
There we go. Sorry. The other question is, my son does not accept accept his condition and doesn't want to go to a doctor or get a diagnosis. When he's in a crisis situation, he leaves home and lives on the streets. I don't know how to help him in this situation. And this question is by Soledad.
Yeah, so sometimes the diagnosis is part of like not taking the medication. That's just sometimes where we're at. That's just sometimes where our loved one's at, with medication. Some of the diagnoses produce like paranoia. So then they might think the medication is poison. It's difficult, very difficult. Now their flight risk. Some of the families I support and their loved one is on the streets. All they can do is find a way to communicate with him. Can you tell us where you are so we can bring you a blanket? Can you tell us where we are so you can make sure you're warm or you need food so we can support you? I mean, sometimes it actually gets to that. I'm certainly not encouraging flight or homelessness, but sometimes, they just keep leaving. So it's time to be creative. It's time to really think outside the box. We're not born with any of this information, and most of the standard training about parenting doesn't even cover it. And now all of a sudden, here we are with an adult child who we don't even know where he or she is, and they've lost their cell phone 5 times. And, and it's just flat out scary. So make sure you're getting good self-care. Make sure you're getting good support and use that community that you can best connect with to get that support that you deserve so you can best support your loved one with this diagnosis where they're not taking their meds or they're living on the streets, and hopefully things will get better and they'll take their meds and they'll find rest, in comfort in your home.
Thank you, David. We have another question. In the chat, it is, my son hears voices and speaks with electronic devices. I think there's a typo, but there's something about retaking medication. And sometimes insults me when I let him know that I need to call the police to take him to an inpatient facility. He will also say that he will also threaten to kill himself and that he has schizophrenia or paranoia.
Yeah. I mean, this is another difficult situation where, it starts without self-care. I mean, if you told me you weren't sleeping at night, I would say that's understandable. But we still are going to give our best support when we have good self-care. I mean, we can't fix, we can only focus on what we can control, and what we can control is self-care. And if your son is doing the things that you're describing in the chat, these are the things that we see with these diagnoses. And this is why it's so complicated and so difficult, to find an answer. So that's why I continue to bring up, empathy, patience, a listening environment, a place for our loved one to be open about their feelings and to find out, for us to identify what has helped in the past so that we can repeat that and get our loved one, some form of help and support.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
I welcome Soledad to speak. From the last comment, I'm not sure what kind of question that is, but if she would like to ask the question, go ahead, Soledad.
Sí, sí, soy yo, Soledad. Mi hijo rompe todas sus identificaciones muchas veces. Pues a veces es muy difícil porque no trae nada en su bolsa, está sin celular, sin nada. Pues no sé cómo manejar esta situación. A veces también se porta muy mal conmigo. Pues muchas veces yo lo corro de la casa, ¿verdad? Porque tengo miedo que me haga daño. Porque ya alguna vez me dijo él que para ser el Dios tiene que matar a su mamá. Entonces yo me asusté mucho y pues lo saqué de la casa, pero aún así él volvió. Ahorita yo lo dejé viviendo en mi casa, ¿verdad? Nomás por un mes y yo me cambié a una recámara, pero me duele dejar a mi hijo, ¿verdad? Porque se va a ir a la calle otra vez y no sé, es muy difícil esta situación. Yo soy su mamá, solo estoy sola con mi hijo, no, nadie me apoya, ¿verdad? Ante esta situación, todos no lo quieren ver a mi hijo. O sea, no tengo el apoyo de nadie, de ninguna familia, solo soy yo y él. Pues es muy doloroso verlo así. Creo que es todo.
Before you
Gracias.
answer the question, David, could you please, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you take the slides down?
Oh, yeah.
And unless there was anything else to add for the questions, Stella, you can go ahead and answer, David. Are you able to hear us, David?
No. I can hear you, but nobody else.
Oh, okay.
I thought they were talking on the Spanish station, actually. I didn't know what was going on.
Stella was interpreting Soledad's question. I'm not sure if you were able to hear her.
No, I didn't hear. I'm only hearing you.
Can you repeat,
Okay.
Stella, the question, please?
And David, it might help if you're also on the English interpretation channel if you haven't chosen that already.
Well, oh, it's okay. I see the globe here.
And then just press
Yes.
English. Thank you.
I did. I never did that before. That's a new thing. Now I hear. Well, we want those questions because you deserve support. And that's why NAMI's here. So, there's some staff on the line, on the Zoom call that can give you those links for family to family and group support in your area. I'm assuming you're in Santa Cruz, and NAMI has, clinician-led and peer-led support that can give you the support that you deserve to have good self-care and so you can feel valued and loved.
Yeah, so I'll
Thank you,
speak
David.
up. Is that okay, Alex?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I can share again the helpline link on the chat, and towards Lucinda, towards Olga. Lucinda commented there are others in your shoes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Therese.
So, Soledad, thank you so much for coming tonight and to the NAMI presentation. And we are here to support you. We have our Spanish helpline is live 9 to 5. So call that line tomorrow. We have a support group of up to 18 people come and support each other. And everyone on the line tonight, these are very difficult situations that you're going through. But here at NAMI Santa Cruz, we have seen our loved ones go from suffering and all sorts of suffering to a pathway to recovery. So as David says, we've seen hope. And on the way to that, we're here to support you. And what David says is the only way you can support your loved one is to support yourself and get self-care. But on the road to doing that, we're here for you. So once you're part of our NAMI family, so come on our Tuesday night. It's in Spanish. We have support groups in English as well, and we'll put that in the chat. But we'll also put the helpline. That's easy. We have one in English and one in Spanish, and we want to help.
One of the questions
Muchas
I see the
gracias.
chat says is there anything in Oklahoma? Yeah, so as it was shared earlier, NAMI's national, and then it's delivered through chapters. So you'll need to look for a chapter in your nearest city in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and you can call us on the helpline and we can look that up for you. So the person in Oklahoma, we're here, we help people in Mexico, all over the country. They come to our support groups. We're international now. So call the helpline and they can help you. They'll look it up for you. Or maybe I can check it out before the end.
And then there's online support groups. You might want to make sure you're in the same time zone with your online support on Zoom.
Yes, good comment, David. I welcome anyone else. We still have a little bit of time. If anyone else would like to share a question, you can either drop it in the chat or you can raise your hand and speak freely. So thank you. Teresa Rodriguez has her hand raised.
Yeah, David, one of the things that Soledad, I believe her name is that her son says he has to kill his mother in order to become God. And what do you suggest we do when something like that happens?
I mean, we have to take these threats as real, and her safety is our top priority. So I would engage a local resource, whether that's law enforcement or a healthcare professional, the CAT team, and, be safety and strategic immediately. I mean, this is imminent danger. This could be imminent danger. I don't know, but I'm hearing imminent danger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
And
I also see
we're getting more training in law enforcement so they can better deal with, these diagnoses. So we're thankful for the direction that law enforcement is going with mental health training.
another hand raised by Selena Vera.
Hi, this is for Soledad, so I wanted to speak in Spanish. Para Soledad, le quería comentar una cosa que nosotros hacemos con mi hermano, que es bipolar. Él ahorita está pasando por un momento de episodio. Y lo que nosotros hacemos es le avisamos primero a la policía en cuanto empiece, para que ellos sepan que es un problema mental. Y cuando es muy severo o cuando él es agresivo, lo que hace la policía viene y lo evalúa y lo llevan al hospital en Soquel, en Santa Cruz. Y así le pueden ayudar con medicamentos. Y después nosotros podemos con eso ayudarle cuando él regrese. Yes. So
Yeah,
I just
you're
wanted to
engaging
let her know.
resources and you're using professionals, I said you're engaging resources and you're using professionals in the areas where they have training, and you're real smart to do that. I also mentioned CAT, but I didn't go into any detail. I'm not even sure what CAT stands for, but it is a medical response team. And they'll work hand in hand with law enforcement, but their training is very specific with the mental health world. I don't know if, can somebody put that in the chat? I don't think I want to type right now and make a bunch of noise, but yeah, the CAT team. I have the CAT team in my phone. They'll do it. CAT teams will do a wellness check too. So we're talking about flight and violence right now, or destructive behavior and some threats, but also some of our loved ones are isolating. So maybe they're independent and they're in an apartment and they won't answer the door, or they've been in their room for a long period of time. The CAT team can be called. They'll come out. You know, the idea is that they'll come out. I can't promise I don't speak for them, but the idea is that they can come out and do a wellness check on your loved one who might be in their bedroom in an apartment building for, you know, an extended period of time, like a week, couple weeks, a month, even longer. Yeah, I don't know what CAT stands for. I'm sorry. If somebody wants to Google it.
I think it might be Community Action Team.
Yeah, something like that. But their training is for mental illness and trauma.
I think for here it would be CIT.
Okay.
I think it's Crisis Intervention Training.
Or team.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So in Santa Cruz, when you call 911, you say you have a mental health, you know, that your loved one is in a mental health condition. And then we don't have a CAT team, we have other mental health resources that go along depending on the time of day. So it doesn't often. So we'll put so that's one thing that when you call 911, if you're in danger, you make sure to let the 911 operator know that you're supporting, that you're calling about your loved one and they have a mental health condition. So if the support person can come with the team, the officers,
Yeah.
if it's the time of day. Unfortunately, we're trying to get 24-hour. Having having trained personnel for 24 hours, but we don't quite yet.
Any other questions?
A mí, soy Soledad, yo quería decirle a David, en el caso de mi hijo, ¿verdad? Como la amenaza que me hizo, yo lo que hice fue que me salí de la casa, vivíamos juntos, ¿verdad? Y por lo que le platico, yo decidí mudarme a una recámara y ya no estar más con él. Entonces nomás le dejé en la casa, pagué solamente este mes y le dije que pues tiene que o acepta ayuda médica o se va a ir a la calle otra vez, porque pues yo ya no estoy dispuesta a vivir con él porque yo me sentía ya en peligro por lo que él me dijo. Hice bien, ¿verdad? No vi otra manera de ayudarlo.
We're here to support your safety decisions. So keep communicating, you know, call the warm line and these numbers that are in the chat to make sure that you're getting the support that you need to stay safe.
So on our website, we have how to talk to an officer or what to do in a crisis. I'm putting that in the chat. It's at the bottom of of our website, and it's not in Spanish right now, I think. Oh, it might be, so I'll look that up right now. I'll have Alex, if you could put the Spanish crisis line. We'll try to do that right now. But here it is, and it's at the bottom of the page of what to do. Oh, that's the affiliate one. I'll put that in just a minute. What to do in a crisis.
Any other questions in the meantime? We're nearing
¿Puedo
the end
preguntar algo
here.
yo? ¿Puedo preguntar algo yo?
Sí.
Ok, mi pregunta es, mi hijo no quiere hacer nada, se la pasa mucho tiempo cerrado en el cuarto y no lo quiere limpiar. ¿Y qué puedo hacer yo para ayudarlo?
You're talking about help him to clean up his room?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a local decision that you can work out inside your family and you know, again, we want to focus on those feelings and find out what your loved one wants or what you want. Maybe that question is more about, you know, what you want. I can't tell for sure if you're talking about your desires or helping him, but we just want to try to stay on that same communication page with our loved one, because it sounds like having a clean room is a priority for you and it's not a priority for him, but maybe it's your house, so you get to make the rules. Or, you know, these are just decisions that we have to make during these hot times of, you know, of our support. And that's why we don't want to do this alone. If we're supporting our loved ones, let's make sure that we're staying connected to healthy community and other family members to get the best support that we can. So when we have to make these tough decisions about, you know, safety and the cleanliness of a room and, you know, am I enabling, am I empowering, you know, get that feedback and that support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
El enlace que, sorry, the link Therese dropped in the chat has different crisis resources like guidelines for calling 911 and crisis services phone numbers, what to do when your family member has been arrested. You can find some of those files in English and Spanish. And you can also find Spanish crisis and other resources in our website on the En Español tab. If you hover over it, there will be a little drop-down menu, and the first option is Recursos en Español. And I can also drop the link in the chat. It's 7:28 in case anybody has last call for questions. And if not, I want to say thank you to everybody.
And I'll do a closing.
Would you like to do your closing first and then I drop the survey, or?
The closing first and then the survey, yeah.
Go
All
ahead,
right.
Therese.
So first of all, for all the family members, first of all, I want to thank our speaker tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And my takeaway is that we take care of ourselves and we do our best to have empathy, and we try to communicate with our loved ones and not guide, but listen carefully with love. And there's some hard topics tonight. Some people are going through some very hard things. And I just want to reach out to say, I admire your courage and your love for caring for your loved one. And like I said, I just want to say, we are here from you. We want to talk to you. The diseases or the conditions our loved ones are going through are not yet solved, really. You know, there's some folks who are going through the hardest part of it. And we want to walk alongside you as you walk alongside your family member. So please reach out. We want to support you. And I just say, and for the the NAMI folks online, including David, who are out there, who most likely have lived experience, who've been there, who are also my heroes, who are here to help. You've been through it, you're still going through it, and you want to support another family as well. So I want to thank you. I see a lot of heroes on the line. So we're in this together. And that is the biggest thing I think about our time is community. So unfortunately, now we're online and we're looking at a TV. So how can we connect in person? And that's, I see Jen Wentworth on the line. She's working in that way. Wentworth and NAMI is going to that even more in that direction. Let's get together. Let's support each other. Let's build our community even stronger. And our both communities, so that you are not, as NAMI said, you are not alone. And I heard someone tonight said, I'm alone, but we don't want you to be, we want to be with you and walk this journey with you. So have a wonderful evening, what's left of it. And thanks everyone. Thanks our translator. Thanks NAMI staff, Sophia and Alex, and good night to all.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Moment to fill out
gracias.
our survey.
Gracias.
Before
Gracias.
you all leave, I'm gonna drop this survey in the
Oh,
chat.
I made a
Muchas gracias a todos.
mistake. I made a mistake
It's
on my
okay.
survey. Oh,
That's
Thank
be in
okay. The
trouble.
survey is there. If you can, please, it really helps us out. We want these speaker meetings to be helpful for you. So your comments are very much valued and we do look at them. So thank you if you fill those out. We really appreciate it. Thank you, David. Thank you, Therese, for
Thank
the
you.
awesome help, words, wisdom, and encouragement. Bye, Olga. And I'll stop the recording.
Thank you.